Close your eyes for just 3 seconds. 3 seconds before that memory surfaces, the one where you tried so hard, gave everything you had, and still heard the silence. Or worse, the criticism wrapped in concern. That feeling in your chest right now, that tightness, that's not random. That's the mother wound speaking. And here's what nobody tells you. It doesn't matter how successful you become, how many people praise you, or how perfect you make your life look from the outside. When that wound is unhealed, you'll always feel like you're performing for an audience that will never applaud. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? That voice in your head that sounds suspiciously like hers, or maybe it's morphed into your own voice by now, telling you that what you did wasn't quite right, that you could have done better, that you're too much of this, not enough of that. I need you to understand something crucial today. This isn't about blaming your mother. This is about understanding why a 35-year-old woman can receive a promotion at work and still feel like a fraud. Why a 42-year-old man can build a beautiful family and still feel fundamentally unworthy of love. Why you can accomplish everything on your list and still lie awake at night feeling empty. The mother wound isn't about one bad day or one harsh comment. It's about the foundation, the very first template for love, worth, and belonging that gets coded into your nervous system before you even have words to describe it. And that template, for many of us, it came with errors in the code. Let me paint you a picture that might feel uncomfortably familiar. You're 7 years old, coming home from school with a drawing you made. You're so proud of it. You used every color in the box, stayed inside the lines mostly, and the teacher even put a gold star on it. You run to show your mother, and she glances at it while stirring something on the stove. "That's nice, honey," she says, her voice flat with exhaustion. "Why don't you go wash your hands for dinner?" No big deal, right? Just a tired mother at the end of a long day. Except that moment, multiplied by hundreds, thousands of similar moments, becomes the lens through which you interpret your worthiness. Your brain, still developing, still learning what matters and what doesn't, files this away. My excitement doesn't matter. My pride doesn't matter. I don't matter enough to be fully seen. Now imagine you're 12 and you didn't make the volleyball team. You come home crying, needing comfort, needing someone to tell you that you're valuable even when you fail. Instead, your mother says, "Well, maybe if you'd practiced more instead of watching TV all the time." Or maybe she says nothing at all, just gets uncomfortable with your tears and changes the subject. Your young brain files this away too. My pain is inconvenient. My vulnerability is unwelcome. I need to handle everything alone. These aren't dramatic moments. There's no abuse here that would make it into a therapy session titled childhood trauma. These are the subtle, daily interactions that create what psychologists call attachment wounds. And here's the devastating part. Your mother probably had the exact same wounds inflicted on her by her mother. This pain is an heirloom passed down through generations like grandmother's china, except instead of dishes, we're inheriting patterns of emotional unavailability, criticism disguised as care, and love that always comes with conditions attached. The mother wound manifests in countless ways, but they all share one common thread: the belief that you are fundamentally not enough as you are, that love must be earned through performance, perfection, or self-abandonment. Think about your mother for a moment. Really think about her. Was she allowed to be soft? Was she permitted to have needs? Was she taught that her worth was inherent, or did she learn, just like you did, that she had to constantly prove her value through sacrifice, service, and silence? Probably not. She likely learned to override her own needs so completely that she didn't even recognize them anymore. She learned to smile through exhaustion, to never ask for help, to somehow know how to do everything perfectly without ever being taught. She learned that her emotions were inconvenient, that her dreams were selfish, that her role was to disappear into the needs of others. And then she became a mother. How do you teach a child that they're worthy of unconditional love when you've never experienced it yourself? How do you validate emotions you were taught to suppress? How do you celebrate a child's authentic self when you had to hide your own to survive? You can't. So the wound continues. Not because our mothers are villains in our story, but because they were wounded children who grew up to wounded mothers doing the best they could with broken blueprints. Let's get specific about how this plays out now in your current life. You're in a meeting at work and someone asks your opinion. You have thoughts, good ones actually, but instead of speaking up, you wait. You wait to see what everyone else says first. You calculate the safest response, the one least likely to be criticized or dismissed. Even when you do speak, you preface it with, "This might be stupid, but," or "I don't know if this makes sense." You apologize for taking up space before you've even finished the sentence. That's the mother wound. Or maybe it shows up differently for you. Maybe you're the overachiever, the one who can't rest until everything is perfect. You work late, you volunteer for extra projects, you say yes when your body is screaming no. People call you successful, but inside you feel like you're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up, because no matter how much you accomplish, it never fills the hole that was created when your worth became tied to your productivity instead of your existence. That's the mother wound too. For some of you, it shows up in your relationships. You choose partners who are emotionally unavailable because that feeling, that desperate reaching for love that stays just out of grasp, that feels like home. Or you become the caretaker in every relationship, convinced that if you just give enough, sacrifice enough, make yourself small enough, then finally you'll be loved. You don't know how to receive love with suspicion. When someone gives you a genuine compliment, your immediate response is deflection. "Oh, this old thing?" When someone wants to do something nice for you, you feel uncomfortable, guilty, like you don't deserve it, because deep down, you don't believe you do. The mother wound teaches you that love is earned through perfection, and since perfection is impossible, you're always falling short. Always not quite good enough, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, for people to finally see the truth about you, that you're fundamentally flawed, unworthy, too much and not enough all at once. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this question. When was the last time you did something purely for your own joy without immediately feeling guilty about it? When was the last time you said no to someone without over-explaining, without justifying, without making yourself smaller to ease their discomfort? When was the last time you celebrated your own success without immediately minimizing it or finding ways it could have been better? If you're struggling to answer these questions, you're not broken, you're wounded, and there's a difference. The mother wound creates very specific patterns in how we move through the world. Let me walk you through the most common ones, and I want you to notice which ones make your stomach drop with recognition. The perfectionism trap. You've internalized the belief that if you can just be perfect enough, you'll finally be worthy of unconditional love. So you optimize everything. Your home has to look a certain way, your body has to look a certain way, your career has to follow a certain trajectory. But here's the cruel irony. Perfectionism isn't actually about being good at things, it's about being safe. Because if you're perfect, you can't be criticized. If you're perfect, you can't be abandoned. If you're perfect, maybe, just maybe, you'll finally be enough. Except you can never be perfect, so you're trapped in an endless cycle of striving and falling short, proving to yourself over and over again that you're not good enough. The people-pleasing pattern. You learn to be hyper-vigilant about other people's emotions and needs. You can walk into a room and immediately sense the mood, adjust your behavior accordingly, become whoever you need to be to keep everyone comfortable. This might sound like a superpower, but it's actually a survival mechanism. As a child, you learn to read your mother's emotional state to determine if it was safe to have needs. Was she stressed? Better be helpful. Was she sad? Better be cheerful. Was she angry? Better be invisible. Now, as an adult, you're still doing it. You're still shape-shifting, still performing, still abandoning yourself to manage everyone else's emotions. And the cost? You have no idea who you actually are underneath all those masks. The chronic self-criticism. That voice in your head, the one that's constantly pointing out your flaws, your mistakes, your inadequacies, sounds a lot like your mother's voice, doesn't it? Or maybe it's worse now because you've perfected the art of self-criticism in ways she never could. You police your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own desires. Before anyone else can reject you, you reject yourself first. It feels safer that way. But what you don't realize is that this constant self-criticism isn't protecting you. It's slowly eroding your sense of self until you're not sure there's anything solid left underneath. The independence at all costs. You pride yourself on not needing anyone. You handle everything yourself. You don't ask for help because asking for help means admitting you're not enough, and that's terrifying. This fierce independence feels like strength, but it's actually armor. It's the wound's way of protecting you from the vulnerability of needing someone and being disappointed, rejected, or shamed for that need. But humans aren't meant to live in isolation. We're wired for connection, and this pattern keeps you locked in loneliness, even when you're surrounded by people. Before we go deeper, and trust me, we're about to go much deeper, I need you to do something for me. If this is resonating with you, if you're recognizing yourself in these patterns, I want you to leave a comment with just one word: enough. Not as a statement of where you are, but as an intention for where you're going, as a reminder that you are enough exactly as you are right now. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We're going to be exploring these deep emotional patterns together, and you'll want to be here for what's coming next. Also, tap that like button if this is speaking to something real in you. It helps more people who need to hear this find their way here. Now, let's continue. We need to talk about how this wound manifests differently depending on your gender, because the expectations and conditioning are different. For daughters, the mother-daughter wound often centers around competition and comparison. Mothers project their own unlived lives, unfulfilled dreams, and unhealed wounds onto their daughters. If your mother sacrificed her career to raise children, she might subtly resent your professional success while also demanding it. If she stayed in an unhappy marriage, she might be threatened by your independence while also criticizing you for not being married. Daughters often feel like they're in an impossible double bind. Damned if they make the same choices their mother made, damned if they don't. There's also the impossible standard of femininity that gets passed down. You're supposed to be beautiful but not vain, successful but not threatening, confident but not arrogant, strong but not hard, nurturing but not self-sacrificing, sexual but not slutty. These contradictions create a psychological maze with no exit. You're always getting it wrong, always too much or not enough, always failing at the impossible task of being the right kind of woman. For sons, the mother-son wound often centers around emotional incest, not sexual abuse, but emotional enmeshment, where the mother uses her son to meet emotional needs that should be met by adult relationships. Sons become confidants, therapists, surrogate partners. They're told they're the man of the house at 8 years old, given responsibility for their mother's emotional well-being before they've developed their own emotional framework. This creates men who feel responsible for women's emotions, but have no idea how to handle their own. Men who are terrified of disappointing women, but also resentful of their needs. Men who seek partners who are emotionally independent because they're exhausted from managing their mother's feelings, but then feel rejected when those partners don't need them. The message is clear. Your value lies in what you can provide, not in who you are. Both of these wounds, regardless of gender, share the same root: conditional love. Love that comes with strings attached, requirements, expectations, unspoken rules that shift without warning. Here's what I need you to understand. Recognizing the mother wound isn't about assigning blame, it's about claiming your power back. For years, maybe decades, you've been living with this underlying belief that something is fundamentally wrong with you, that if you just tried harder, were better, were different, you'd finally feel worthy. But what if nothing is wrong with you? What if you're carrying wounds that never were yours to begin with? What if the voice telling you you're not enough isn't actually the truth? It's just an echo of pain passed down through generations. This recognition is the first step toward breaking the cycle. Because here's what happens when you start to see the pattern clearly. You stop personalizing your mother's limitations. Her inability to celebrate your joy wasn't about your joy not being worthy of celebration. It was about her own unprocessed pain, making it impossible for her to hold space for positive emotions. Her criticism wasn't about you being wrong, it was about her projecting her own self-hatred onto you. Her emotional unavailability wasn't about you not deserving emotional connection, it was about her never learning how to emotionally connect in the first place. When you understand this, really understand it, it starts to create space between the wound and your identity, space between her voice and your truth, space to finally ask yourself, who am I when I'm not trying to be good enough for her? But here's what they don't tell you about healing the mother wound. It requires grief. You have to grieve the mother you needed but didn't have. You have to grieve the childhood where you were allowed to be messy, emotional, imperfect, and still completely loved. You have to grieve the version of yourself that could have grown up feeling inherently worthy instead of constantly proving your worth. This grief is complicated because your mother is probably still alive. You can't just mourn her and move on. She's still there, still triggering you, still pushing the same buttons she installed. And here's the really complicated part. You probably still love her. Even with all the wounds, all the pain, all the patterns, you love her. Because she's a human, and she did her best with what she had, and she probably gave you beautiful things too. This is the nuance that makes healing so difficult. It's not black and white. She's not a villain. You're not a victim. It's just layers upon layers of inherited pain, each generation doing slightly better than the last, but still falling short of what was needed. So you grieve. You grieve the fantasy of who she could have been. You grieve the relationship you deserved. You grieve the years you spent trying to earn love that should have been given freely. And in that grieving, something shifts. You start to see her as a whole person, not just your mother, but a woman who had her own mother wound, a woman who was probably doing the best she could with her own unhealed trauma. This doesn't excuse the harm, but it does create space for compassion. And in that compassion, you can start to separate who you are from what she made you believe about yourself. Healing the mother wound doesn't happen in one dramatic moment of realization. It happens in tiny, repeated choices to do things differently. It's the moment you notice yourself apologizing for existing and you stop mid-sentence. You don't finish the apology, you just let yourself take up space without justification, and then sit with the discomfort of not over-explaining yourself. It's buying yourself flowers just because, without waiting for someone else to give them to you, without needing an occasion or achievement to justify it. It's looking at yourself in the mirror, and instead of immediately cataloging your flaws, you say something kind, even if you don't believe it yet, even if it feels ridiculous. It's setting a boundary with your actual mother, maybe a small one at first, and not crumbling when she responds with hurt or anger or guilt. Remembering that her discomfort with your boundaries doesn't mean your boundaries are wrong. It's letting yourself be mediocre at something, taking a class or trying a hobby purely for enjoyment, not to be the best at it, not to prove anything, just because it brings you a moment of peace. It's asking someone for help and not immediately trying to repay them, just receiving, just letting someone show up for you because they want to, not because you've earned it. These small acts of rebellion against the wound, they add up. At first, it feels performative. You're playing a role, pretending to be someone who believes they're worthy. But here's the beautiful thing about neuroplasticity. Your brain doesn't know the difference between real confidence and practiced confidence. Every time you act as if you're worthy, you're creating new neural pathways. You're literally rewiring the template. And slowly, so slowly you might not even notice it happening, you start to believe it. Not intellectually, deeper than that, in your bones, in your nervous system. You start to feel what it's like to exist without constantly bracing for criticism, to move through the world without performing for an invisible audience, to just be without needing to justify or prove or earn your right to space. One of the most powerful tools in healing the mother wound is learning to reparent yourself. This means you become the mother you needed. You learn to give yourself the unconditional love, the validation, the emotional attunement that was missing. When that critical voice shows up, that voice that sounds like her but has become your own, you don't argue with it. You don't try to logic it away. Instead, you speak to yourself the way you would speak to a scared child. I hear that you're scared you're not good enough. That makes sense given what you learned growing up. But I'm here now and I'm going to take care of you. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. It feels absurd at first, talking to yourself like this out loud or in your head. Feels like play acting, but that's exactly what it is. You're acting the part of the nurturing parent until it becomes real. You learn to check in with yourself the way a good parent checks in with a child. What do you need right now? Are you hungry, tired, overstimulated? What would feel good? And then, and this is the crucial part, you actually give yourself what you need. You don't override it, you don't minimize it, you don't tell yourself you're being ridiculous. If you're tired, you rest. If you're hungry, you eat. If you need quiet, you create it. If you need connection, you reach out. You stop treating your needs as inconveniences to be managed and start treating them as information to be honored. This is reparenting. This is how you build a new foundation, brick by brick, choice by choice. Now we need to address the elephant in the room. What do you do about your relationship with your actual mother once you've recognized the wound? This is where it gets complicated because there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Some of you will need to create significant distance, maybe limited contact, maybe no contact. And if that's what you need for your healing, please hear this. That's okay. You're allowed to protect yourself. You're allowed to choose your well-being over maintaining a relationship that continues to harm you. Some of you will stay in relationship, but with much clearer boundaries. You'll learn to expect less from her emotionally. You'll stop seeking her approval, her validation, her understanding, not because you don't want it, but because you've accepted that she can't give it. This acceptance is its own kind of grief, but it's also liberating. When you stop expecting her to be different, her limitations stop hurting as much. Some of you will find that as you heal, the relationship actually improves. As you become less reactive, less desperate for her approval, there's space for a more authentic connection. Not the mother-child relationship you always wanted, but perhaps an adult relationship built on acceptance of who you both actually are. And here's what I want you to know. Whatever path you choose, it's the right one for you. There's no moral superiority in maintaining a relationship that's damaging to your mental health. There's no failure in needing distance to heal. The goal isn't to have a perfect relationship with your mother. The goal is to have a healthy relationship with yourself. And sometimes those two things are incompatible. If you're a parent yourself or planning to become one, this work takes on even more urgency. Because the truth is, unless you heal your mother wound, you will pass it on to your children. Not because you want to, not because you're a bad parent, but because unhealed trauma doesn't just disappear. It finds new ways to express itself. You might swear you'll never criticize your children the way you were criticized, only to find those same words coming out of your mouth when you're stressed or triggered. You might promise yourself you'll always be emotionally available, only to find yourself shutting down when your child expresses big emotions because you don't know how to handle them. You never learned. Breaking the cycle requires conscious, consistent effort. It means getting therapy. It means doing your own healing work. It means being willing to apologize to your children when you mess up, to repair the ruptures, to model that mistakes don't make you unworthy. It means allowing your children to have needs without making those needs about you. It means celebrating their joy without comparing it to your own achievements. It means holding space for their pain without trying to fix it or minimize it. It means letting them be who they are, not who you need them to be. This is hard work, probably the hardest work you'll ever do, because you're fighting against your own conditioning, your own triggers, your own unmet needs. But imagine a child growing up actually believing they're worthy of love just because they exist, not because they're smart or accomplished or well-behaved, but simply because they are. Imagine a child who doesn't spend their adult life trying to earn what should have been freely given. Imagine breaking that chain of inherited pain. That's what's possible when you do this work. That's what's at stake. There's a spiritual component to the mother wound that we need to address because it goes beyond just the personal relationship with your individual mother. In many ways, the mother wound is also a disconnect from the divine feminine, from the archetypal energy of unconditional love, nurturing, receptivity, and worthiness. When your personal experience of mothering was conditional, critical, or emotionally absent, it damages your relationship with the feminine principle itself. This shows up as difficulty receiving, difficulty with rest, difficulty trusting in abundance, difficulty believing that the universe might actually be supportive rather than hostile. It shows up as an over-reliance on masculine energy, doing, achieving, controlling, forcing, because the feminine energies of being, receiving, allowing, trusting feel dangerous or unfamiliar. Healing this dimension means reconnecting with those feminine qualities within yourself, regardless of your gender. It means learning that receptivity isn't weakness, that rest isn't laziness, that your worth isn't determined by your productivity. It means developing a relationship with a benevolent maternal energy, whether you find that in nature, in the divine feminine of your spiritual tradition, in the archetypal great mother, or simply in your own capacity for self-nurturing. You're essentially rebuilding your relationship with the very concept of being mothered, and that means you have to let yourself be held, metaphorically and sometimes literally, by something greater than yourself. I need to be honest with you about something. Healing the mother wound isn't quick. This isn't a weekend workshop fix. This isn't something you can positive affirmation your way out of in 30 days. These patterns were coded into your nervous system before you had conscious memory. They've been reinforced for years, maybe decades. They're woven into how you perceive yourself, how you relate to others, how you move through the world. Unwinding that takes time. You'll have breakthroughs followed by backslides. You'll have weeks where you feel like you're finally free, and then something will trigger you and you'll feel like you're right back at the beginning. That's normal. That's part of the process. Healing isn't linear. But here's what you can expect if you commit to this work. In the first few months, you're probably just going to be building awareness. You'll start noticing the patterns as they're happening. You'll catch yourself people-pleasing or over-apologizing or criticizing yourself, and you'll think, oh, there it is again. After 6 months to a year, you'll start interrupting the pattern sometimes, not always, but sometimes you'll catch yourself mid-apology and stop. Sometimes you'll set a boundary even though it's uncomfortable. After a year or two, the new patterns will start to feel more natural. You'll notice that your baseline anxiety is lower, that you're less reactive, that you can interact with your mother without it completely derailing your emotional state for days. After several years, you'll realize that the old patterns still show up occasionally, but they don't run your life anymore. They're like old habits you can observe from a distance rather than compulsions you can't resist. And here's the beautiful thing. Even though it takes time, every single step forward matters. Every time you choose differently, you're healing not just yourself, but the lineage. You're creating a new legacy. So where does this leave us? You're here because something in you recognized the truth of what we've been talking about, because you've been carrying this wound maybe your whole life, and you're tired of never feeling good enough, tired of the constant self-criticism, tired of performing for love, tired of being disconnected from yourself. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to carry this anymore. Not alone, not forever. The mother wound is real, but it's not your destiny. It's not who you are. It's what happened to you, what was done to you, what you inherited, but it doesn't have to define the rest of your life. You get to choose differently. You get to decide that the chain of conditional love ends with you, that you're going to learn to love yourself unconditionally, even if no one ever modeled that for you. You're going to grieve what you didn't get and build something new anyway. You're going to be both, sad about what was missing and hopeful about what's possible. This work isn't easy. Some days it's going to feel impossible. Some days you're going to want to give up, to decide that it's easier to just live with the wound than to do the painful work of healing it. But I promise you this, you are worth the effort. Not because of what you accomplish or how perfect you are or how much you sacrifice. You're worth it because you exist. That's it. That's the whole reason. You are enough right now, exactly as you are. Not when you heal, not when you're better, not when you finally figured it all out, right now. The little child inside you who never got to hear that, they're listening. They're waiting. They've always been waiting to hear that they're enough. Tell them right now. And then tomorrow, tell them again. And the day after that, and the day after that, until finally, maybe slowly, maybe suddenly, you start to believe it. That's the work. That's the healing. And you don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to keep showing up. Keep showing up for yourself the way no one else did. Keep choosing yourself even when it feels selfish. Keep believing that you deserve love, especially on the days when it feels like a lie. Because one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, it won't feel like a lie anymore. It'll just feel like truth. And that's when you'll know. The wound is still there. It's part of your story, but it's not running your life anymore. You are. If this resonated with you, I want to hear from you. Drop that word in the comments. Enough. Let it be a declaration. Let it be a promise to yourself. Let it be the beginning of something new. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been struggling with these same feelings of never being good enough. Because the more we talk about this, the more we heal collectively. And make sure you're subscribed to this channel because we're going to keep going deeper into these topics: healing, growth, breaking generational patterns. This is just the beginning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for doing this work. You are enough. You've always been enough. Now go remind yourself of that every single day until you believe it.